Nuggets, Lakers. We touched on this briefly last pod, some of our gut feelings, but what are some of the keys that stand out to you in this one?
Like we mentioned on last episode, if you guys watched, this is a premier battle of offense and defense, something that we have been looking forward to since we got this matchup. Number one offense in basketball, the Denver Nuggets in these playoffs, an offensive rating of over 118 against the LA Lakers, who I believe have a defensive rating of like 107 in these playoffs. It's insane. I mean, it's awesome. This is what we're waiting. This is what we waited for. Best offense versus best defense. Jokić, the best offensive player on the planet, at basically a 31-point triple-double on insane efficiency in these playoffs. Anthony Davis playing the best defensive basketball of anybody I've seen in a long time. I think that's huge. I think that's massive what we get out of those two. And again, Anthony Davis has been one of the only guys who's really been able to slow down Nikola Jokić. 21 points in their head-to-head matchups. And again, I noted only 5 assists, too. Like, he's really slowed down Jokić. That's one playoff run, too, that was pretty poor. Those include regular season matchups. I think if Jokić has a better shooting run than he did against Davis, like I mentioned last show, I think that's a big thing if Jokic's jump shot is falling. I have no issue, though. I think it's going to be falling. He's at over 40% from deep. He's at over 50% on jump shots in these playoffs. Like, I just expect his jumper and touch shots to fall. So I think that's obviously the biggest matchup. The number one offensive player in basketball versus the number one defensive player in basketball. I think the next thing is what you pointed out earlier in the show, Carson, is are we going to get superstar LeBron James? We've been talking about that all playoffs long. But this was the most encouraging that we've seen LeBron in these playoffs. This last game against Golden State, controlling the game, taking mismatches, getting Curry and Clay switched on to him. And that's what I want to see from LeBron in this series. Not that there's a lot of mismatches that I think he can attack, because I think the Nuggets have really good perimeter defense and guards with size too, right? Even if you're getting a Jamal Murray switched on to you, that's still a 6'4", 6'5" guy that's going to be physical. KCP, a 6'5", good, strong wing. Bruce Brown, 6'5", good and strong. I want to see LeBron attack those mismatches, but they're not as there's not as much disparity between the Warriors' mismatches that he would get. The Pools, the Currys, the Klay Thompsons. But I want to see him go to the post. I want to see him garner more attention, see if he can get guys to slide off of him, be physical, get into the low block, get downhill. 16 points in the paint in that last game, 6 points in transition. It's the best we've seen LeBron and the most engaged we've seen LeBron. And I want to see that version of him. And I think there are mismatches that he can really attack too. Even MPJ, if he gets that switch in this series, I want to see him consciously attack those, go on the low block, because that is where LeBron is at his best. And we need to see if the jumper is going to fall too, of course. But I do think the Lakers hold one more distinct advantage that I'll point out over Denver. One, I think the cumulative defense is one of them, the defensive ceiling that I expect from this team. But I do think there's more creation down the depth of this Lakers roster, Carson. Like, there are guys that I love Jamal, and superstar Jamal is the best perimeter creator that we have on the court, right? But there's just a different level of depth of creators, I think, outside of like Jamal. Guys who can actually create with the ball in their hands. Again, there's one guy can have an off night for LA, but you have Schroeder, you have Reeves, you have Hachimura, all who can have a big night. D'Lo, like they can all have a big night, and I think that's the one advantage that I would give LA over Denver distinctly, is that I think they have more creators that you can turn to night. Not that I expect Denver's players to disappear, you know what I mean? They have a consistent formula, a consistent identity, but night to night, if MPJ has a cold night, right? If Jamal has a cold night, I just think there are more guys that LA can rely on than Denver down the roster.
That's interesting. I think that there are more creators in LA. I don't necessarily know that there are more offensive weapons, though, when you consider the pure shooting that you get from MPJ, KCP, the rim finishing that you get from Aaron Gordon, Bruce Brown's versatility. Like, Denver's the best offense in the league for a reason. I do think, though, that a lot of this comes down to, do you think that Anthony Davis can limit Nikola Jokić? Because if the answer is yes, I think you should absolutely pick the Lakers. I'm just not sure that he can. And you give those head-to-head numbers, what I'll say is Jokić was obviously great by the bubble run, right? And then he took a significant leap for his first MVP season. And then he took another leap as a scorer for his second MVP season. And he's just continued to get better and better. And in their last 5 head-to-head matchups, he's been 30, 13, and 7, 56% from the field, even while having off shooting nights from deep, only 16% in those head-to-head games. So I just don't value that track record as much. I want to look at, okay, how do these guys match up presently? And I do think that AD is like the closest thing for an answer to Jokic in the world. But all I will say is throughout these playoffs, right? If you look at the sort of one-on-one defenders who Jokic has been facing, Rudy Gobert, a 3-time defensive player of the year, who, sure, one-on-one defense has never been his strength, right? It has been the dominant rim protection, his value as a team defender, but nevertheless considered a very good one-on-one defender. And Jokic dominated him so thoroughly that they started putting Cat on him to have Gobert in help. And then DeAndre Ayton was supposed to be a good option, right? A big physical guy with tons of length, and Jokic absolutely ate him alive. And AD is in a different tier, right? But as I've said before, there is stuff with Jokic that I don't know how you take away. When a guy is 280 pounds and all he has to do is just touch the ball in the post and he can make a hook with 65% efficiency. I mean, that's literally what he shot in the regular season on hooks. Like, yeah, AD's length can matter a bit there, but I don't know that it matters a ton. He just faced two guys with insane, literally historic wingspans, and they couldn't affect those shots. And AD's not going to be able to keep him from getting to his spots because Jokic is significantly stronger. And then you look at out a pick and roll, he's going to still be getting those floater looks, which he can also hit with near 70% efficiency is what he did in this regular season. And AD, also one-on-one defense, very, very good. Not his greatest strength. Like AD's best ability, I think, is how well he can guard the pick and roll, his defensive versatility, and his rim protection, his defensive playmaking, his ability to affect passing lanes with his great hands and all that. So I just don't know that he's really making Jokic uncomfortable in a one-on-one context. And then, again, the more he has to be singularly devoted to Jokic, which he will. He cannot leave Jokic for those 12-foot floaters. Like, that's just suicide. The less of an impact he can have as that dominant team defender. So I think Jokic wins that matchup, and that is definitely huge to informing how I view this series. But the other thing that I think is key is how consistently can AD assert himself offensively and go at Jokic, because as dominant as AD has been defensively, and I think his sheer defensive dominance is enough to put him in like the top 5 player alive conversation. It's one of the best individual defensive runs that I can recall seeing. He has gone up and down offensively in terms of his assertiveness, in terms of his skilled shot making, and he's only averaging 21 a game in these playoffs accordingly. But how much can he expose Jokic vertically, right, as the great lob threat that we know that he can be? How physical can he be? I don't know that he's going through Jokic a ton, and it's not like Jokic is going to be an easy guy for him to exploit out of the post, because there he's going to rely on his skilled shot making, and Jokic is at the very least a big guy there, not easy to move off his spots or anything. So I do think a lot of this is going to come down to him getting good looks out of pick and roll and just being consistently aggressive and making Jokic work on that end of the floor, trying to wear him down, trying to get him into foul trouble. I think that's a key. And I do think that LeBron, obviously, I mean, how aggressive is he? How much does he assert himself? What role do we see him in? Is it going to be primarily off-ball LeBron? Are we going to see more point LeBron? But I think more than anything, in that off-ball versus on-ball conversation is, do we get jump shooting LeBron? Do we get downhill LeBron? Because in this playoff run, 26% of his shots are coming at the rim inside of 3 feet. That is a career low. That is compared to 39% in the bubble run, while he's relying on the 3-ball more than ever in his playoff career. So I want to see more of that LeBron AD pick and roll, right? Because then you can go at Jokic, challenges him as a rim protector, or you can try to find AD with those lobs. I think that is a problematic action for the Nuggets to guard. And I also want to see more of LeBron attacking out of the post. Like you said, I think Aaron Gordon is actually a good matchup for him. I mean, that's a long, big, physical guy, but it's still LeBron. LeBron, with his physicality, with his post shot making, with his post playmaking, not an easy cover for anyone. A problematic matchup no matter what. And aggressive LeBron also just makes them less dependent on these guards. And I have praised these guards. I think they are a key difference maker, a reason that this team has a title ceiling, a massive difference from the bubble, a big reason that LeBron has been able to hold back a bit, not have to go 100% in every game. But they are inconsistent, and how well they play is a key. in wins in this playoff run, D'Lo has been over 18 a night on 57.5% true shooting. Austin Reeves has been 17 a night on 62% true shooting. In losses, D'Lo has been 10 points per game on 45% true shooting. Reeves has been under 13 points per game on 48% true shooting. So they are still relying on that pull-up jump shooting, especially D'Lo, and sometimes that's just going to leave him. And I don't think you want to be in a spot where those guys are dictating possession after possession and they're off. Like, that's where in this series, LeBron has just got to go. He's got to take over. He can't pick his spots like that because I think Denver's significantly better than Golden State. I mean, Memphis, listen, is not even belonging in this conversation, but I don't know that you're getting away with the inconsistency in effort overall that the Lakers have at times in this playoff run and the inconsistency in hyper-aggressive LeBron, because this is the best offense in the league with, in my opinion, the best player in the league and certainly the best offensive player in the league. So all of those stand out to me. And then one more thing is how pronounced is the shooting discrepancy in this series? Denver is one of the best shooting teams in the league. 39% from three in these playoffs. Were consistently in the regular season at the top of the league in terms of three-point efficiency. And we talk about, I mean, consistently everybody on the floor for them can shoot the ball. Like Aaron Gordon, maybe it's not his preference, but he can knock him down. Jokić has been unconscious in this playoff run. And then you have MPJ, Jamal Murray, and KCP, lethal shooters of the basketball. Whereas LA is always going to be more reliant on getting downhill, that physicality, and they have guys who, aren't afraid to take their shots from deep, but they're 31% from three in this playoff run, and they don't have many truly great shooters. So I think that they need to be competitive in that arena because Denver can be great there. And again, there's just a level of offensive, consistent dominance from Denver that you're getting that you weren't getting from the Warriors, where they were so singularly reliant on Steph, and they didn't have the kind of shot making around him that Denver does with Jokić. Again, I'm not going to acknowledge Memphis in this conversation. They were a deeply, deeply flawed team. So I am so conflicted on this series because I've been such an LA believer. I mean, Logan, you and I, before the playoffs, we took them to the conference finals. It's hilarious to me. The two takes that I had that upset people most were LA to the conference finals and then beat at 8 in my playoff rankings. Look at me now, boy. A couple of home runs. Think outside the box. But I do think that there's a level of offensive dominance from this Denver team that it would be really tough for anybody to take away. And there's still inconsistencies with LA offensively that could come back to bite them. And Denver has home court where they've been 37-4 when Jokić plays, and it's one of the few home courts in the field that I think really matters and is like the most important in my eyes. So I think I'm still going Denver in 7. Are there any other keys that stand out for you? I mean, what's your ultimate feel on what's going to happen here?
I'm going to take the Lakers in 7, but I think that is the biggest key, Carson, is the offensive consistency that we get from LA. That's the big advantage that Denver has had over any of these teams in these playoffs that we have noted throughout. That they are the best offense in basketball that never stops coming. With Nikola Jokić on the court, there's always something. If it's him taking over as a scorer, if he's setting up all of these great spot-up shooters, the offense never stops attacking. And with the level of Jamal Murray that we have gotten in these playoffs, it just makes Denver's offensive attack so much more consistent than LA's, and I think that's what you have to be concerned about. I honestly like both of the pick and rolls in this series, and I think that's big, right? Against Jokić, you've got guys where if Jokić is running drop, Schroeder, Reeves, and D'Lo are going to have to eat in that mid-range area because Jokić, the way AD is going to have to stay attached to Jokić, and Murray should be able to eat out of the pick and roll, Jokić is going to have to stay attached to AD because if he doesn't, that's an easy backdoor every time, or they're just going vert over Jokic's head. And so I think that, there's a big burden on LA's guards to be great. And I also think that's the thing too, Carson, is I think LA has to continue being aggressive at attacking the paint and attacking Jokić. And he's not a great vertical athlete, and that's one advantage that if LeBron is aggressive, if he can get by his guys, or if you're even going pick and roll action with him and AD, I think LeBron holds a distinct aggressive advantage and physicality advantage over Jokić where he can still finish over him. And that's a big difference, too, is just Jokić being in the paint. And that's what I think the Lakers have to attack. The Lakers have been great at taking it away. I think it's a really interesting matchup. The Nuggets have made 57% of their shots inside the paint in these playoffs, taking its 53% of its shots inside the paint. That's the highest frequency in these playoffs. And the Lakers are allowing teams to shoot just 51%. That's the second lowest in the paint. And they only shoot 48% with AD on the floor. This is a Nuggets offense that is great finishing downhill. It'll be interesting to see if AD can take that away. But for LA, because again, I think Denver's offense is going to be consistent. I love this Lakers defense. I don't think they're going to stop coming. I think the Lakers offense has to attack the paint downhill with LeBron and AD, and I think their guards have to be great in the mid-range consistently. And yeah, I think you're right too. I think they have to shoot well. I don't know what it is, man. I think Denver can get it done, but there's something, man. I'm leaning LA in 7, man. I don't know, man. There's something about LeBron. I think LeBron, we've only seen one game of it, and that's why it's so hard to bet on that LeBron's going to crank it up. But it's one series. And this is the most rested we've seen LeBron in a playoff run. And yes, game to game, there are issues that I have with him being consistent, but I think we get a really good LeBron series where he turns back the clock a little bit and gets this team over the hump. If he's going to turn it up for one series, now's the time to do it. And I trust LeBron, I think, to turn this team up and to get it done. Again, we haven't seen it in this playoff run, so I'm not banking on eye test, but there's a faith in LeBron thing here, and so I'm going to go Lakers in 7.
Absolutely. The Lakers, I still believe, can reach a higher ceiling. And I think the key is, as I mentioned, consistent downhill aggression and highly assertive offensively LeBron and AD. And if those guys are their best, then yeah, I think that LA does win this series. But the key thing that I do think about is how do you take Denver away? Because you mentioned those paint defense stats from LA. That's facing entirely different kind of offenses trying to get downhill, largely offenses that are dictated by perimeter players trying to create looks either for themselves or others at the rim. Jokić doesn't have to get to the rim, right? He is going to kill you with the paint touch shot making. And if you have AD really attached to him, then you are going to open up opportunities for those cutters, which is so fundamental to the Nuggets offense, always creating great looks for guys around them. LA's also not going to be able to play their best defensive personnel in this series because I think, as we saw Vando get played off the floor against Golden State, I think that same thing happens here. I think that they would just leave him. And yeah, they still have good defensive guards. Like obviously Schroeder can come in and do a fine job on Jamal Murray. But you are taking away another potential piece in that arsenal. And Jamal has been so great. Like when he's 26 a night and is playmaking well and is unbelievably lethal from deep 40%, that is the level of star perimeter creator that they need alongside Nikola Jokić. And I don't think that they're going to take that away. So it feels incredibly difficult. I think we'll see what level Boston can reach, but like we definitely have the 3 teams that have felt title caliber throughout this playoff run here. No disrespect to the Heat. I do not feel that way about them, but LA and Denver, this is how it was meant to be. This is how it is. Best offense, best defense, best offensive player, best defensive player. LeBron freaking James. Awesome offensive supporting cast. It's going to be really, really fun to see it all play out.